On Friday, South Korea's state media reported that several North Korean missiles were recently moved from a rocket facility in the capital Pyongyang amid speculation that the North was preparing to take more provocative actions.
This is no news to most South Koreans who have long become immune to North Korea threats. But many experts around the world are now voicing their opinions on how North Korea is unlikely to start a war it cannot win. This as many fear the chances of a nuclear exchange between the U.S. and the Hermit Kingdom are at their highest point in recent years.
A top diplomat from the United States is in Beijing this weekend, where he will meet with Chinese leaders on Saturday. The North Korean issue and Trump's upcoming visit to China will be high on the agenda.
Secretary Tillerson's visit comes as the U.S. looks to tighten an economic squeeze aimed at forcing North Korea to retreat from its nuclear arms and missiles program. U.S. officials say Beijing appears increasingly willing to cut ties with North Korea's economy by adopting UN sanctions, after long accounting for some 90% of its neighbors' foreign trade. During his visit in Beijing with Chinese President Xi Jinping Saturday, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said that the U.S. has multiple direct channels of communication with North Korea. Tillerson telling a group of reporters that the U.S. is, quote, probing to see whether Pyongyang is interested in dialogue.
U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson acknowledged Saturday that the United States is maintaining direct channels of communications with North Korea. This is as tensions rise over Pyongyang's nuclear and missile programs and the country's leaders spar through bellicose name-calling. Tillerson has said the U.S. was probing North Korea's willingness to talk.
Adding, quote, "We ask, would you like to talk? We have lines of communication with Pyongyang. We're not in a dark situation."
CBS News, citing various pundits on Wednesday, says the survival of the regime in Pyongyang is its leader Kim Jong-un's top priority, despite behavior that could otherwise be seen as reckless and irrational.
This comes at a time of escalating tensions between the two countries, with Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un trading insults and threats. Trump at the UN vowing to
totally destroy North Korea.
if forced to defend itself or its allies, which prompted North Korea's foreign minister to suggest the country could next test a hydrogen bomb over the Pacific Ocean.
They also say that although Pyongyang may or may soon have the capability to devastate an American city with a nuclear-tipped ICBM, it's seen as having no ability to destroy the U.S. outright. However, amid the escalating war of words and brewing mistrust between Washington and Pyongyang, experts say even the slightest of miscalculations could easily trigger a full-scale war on the Korean peninsula.
My concern is that cumulatively, this will all lead to some sort of horrible miscalculation where Kim doesn't take something seriously and he reacts.
There are some observers who also fear that the world is closer to nuclear war than it has been at any time since the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Although it's hard to predict the exact shape and form of a potential military conflict on the Korean peninsula, the death toll is easily expected to be in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Those fears continue to persist, with a harsh verbal tit-for-tat between the U.S. and North Korea showing no signs of cooling down at the moment.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in says his government has stepped up efforts to take back wartime operational control of its own forces from the U.S.-led command structure at a time when North Korea and the United States are both threatening war. In an address to commemorate the nation's 69th Armed Forces Day, President Moon said by increasing defense capabilities and reducing its reliance on American military might, South Korea would project more power in the region and better deter a North Korean attack.
우리가 전시작전권을 가져야
Moon said when the South has wartime operational control, the North will fear us more and our armed forces will be trusted more. The Liberal government in Seoul may also be trying to send a political message that it does not support U.S. President Donald Trump's strong fire and fury rhetoric and threats to respond with overwhelming force to North Korean provocations. Robert Kelly is a professor of political science at Pusan National University in South Korea.
I think this might be a way for Moon to separate himself somewhat from the behavior of Donald Trump in the last month. I don't think South Koreans want fire and fury.
After becoming a democracy in the 1990s, the South Korean government assumed peacetime command of its 655,000 active military personnel. The South Korean military coordinates closely with the Combined Forces Command and the United Nations Command, led by U.S. General Vincent Brooks, who is also commander of the over 28,500-member U.S. military force in Korea. In wartime, the U.S. commander would assume control of South Korean forces as well, but it is not an automatic transfer of command. The South Korean president has to first agree to cede that control. Regional security analyst Daniel Pinkston with Troy University in Seoul.
In a way, President Moon has control and he has a veto over giving control to the U.S. and giving control to the Combined Forces Command.
Moon and other South Korean liberals have long advocated for wartime operational control in large part as a sovereignty issue, and it is associated with anti-American sentiment in the country. Conservatives have long opposed taking on independent wartime control out of concern that it might weaken the U.S. commitment to help defend the South. Robert Kelly says it could be seen by enemies and allies alike as a sign of growing friction between Seoul and Washington.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what the North Koreans have wanted for a long time, right? Sort of drive the two of them apart, and they'd be getting what they want if this goes through.
In 2014, Seoul and Washington decided to postpone wartime operational control transfer until at least the year 2020, but made the deal contingent on South Korea gaining the necessary operational capabilities. Making the operational control transfer decision based on capability can produce a positive outcome for the U.S.-South Korea alliance. Daniel Pinkston says it puts the obligation on Seoul to take more responsibility for its own defense.
But if there's no discussion and there's no sense at all that there would ever be any kind of OPCON transition, then there's kind of a moral hazard problem, right? So then South Korea, well, we don't have to worry about it because the U.S. always has OPCON. They're always going to take care of us, so why should we spend more on the defense budget?
To that end, President Moon is promising to implement reforms to create a more professional military and to increase national defense spending to develop its own missile defense system and launch 5 military satellites to provide needed intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities.